A large chunk of Americans are happy to be asleep. They don't care. They're lazy. They have no purpose. I want people to wake up. I want people to listen to any politician with a grain of salt and then look at what they're doing and look at the actual bills that are being brought forward and what it actually means. People don't feel like they want to do the work.
Have they ever done the work, though? A
Mhm.
lot of the work has mostly been done by people who have had that much more of, let's say, a will to power to change things. Be they the intellectuals who brought upon something like communism back in Russia. They were able to utilize the masses for their own particular ends. Obviously, it was very horrible what that resulted in. Mencius Moldbug, how he says that he would rather have a small amount of people who go to Burning Man as opposed to having all these red state people. Because the red state people are still going to be there, they're not going to go anywhere. But as far as people who actually have a certain modicum of influence to change things, it would be people who are within the aristocracy, so to speak. Well, Adam, do you think that there is going to be somewhat of a balkanization happening in the U.S.? My big concern there is what exactly is going to happen to, let's say, something like the nuclear arsenal, something like all of these things that I think do require there being a big power from just all hell breaking loose.
It already feels like the divided states of America, and then we are called the United States for a reason because it's a bunch of states united. It's not one entity, as people seem to think that we are. I mean, granted, America on one flag, but we are still the United States. So I think the main issue is China. I think China is slowly trying to take over the globe. And I don't think they're trying. I think they're literally doing it. I think they're making moves. They're slowly taking land from in every single country, including America. China owns a lot of land in America right now, and people don't seem to be talking about that. Even in Texas, there was like a billionaire that tried to make a new wind farm, and Texas actually banned him from doing it because they're like, we can't have our power grid owned by someone outside of Texas. Like, that's a frightening premise. So these things are all going on behind the scenes, and I think that's really the thing we need to be focused on. And us splitting up as a country, I think, is a horrendous idea. The problem is mainstream media, news, politicians, Hollywood, all these talking heads are keeping us divided. They want us to. I feel like they want to break us apart because I think they're all getting paid by China. I mean, I'm sure I'm being a little conspiratorial here, but from everything I've seen,
would it be a fair assumption to make? And this has nothing to do with the size of the Chinese people at all. I am merely making this analogy having to do with the metaphorical size of, let's say, the influence of something like the Chinese government over the will of the United States. If we were to have the analogy of that scene from Gulliver's Travels, where Gulliver is strapped down while he was sleeping by the Lilliputians, and it doesn't take that much for him to get up, would it be a fair assessment to make that maybe America, with all of its creativity, all of its Promethean potential, to think things through and to get all the best people together and to have them create something amazing, that it's kind of like a sleeping giant right now, where we've gotten so good and so comfortable for a pretty long time, for the last half a century, that we've kind of fallen asleep in the wheel and let a lot of little people, be they Chinese government people, be they politicians here, kind of run roughshod. Adam, do you think that that is a fair assessment to make?
yes and no, because the problem is half of, maybe not half, that's unfair. A large chunk of Americans are happy to be asleep. They're happy to be there laying down, pinned down because they don't care. They're lazy. They have no purpose. Their purpose is now to fight ferociously to remain asleep. That's what it feels like. They're like, no, 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 we need to be sleeping. Like, obviously I'm using your analogy, but you can see my point there. It's like they're like, where me, I want people to wake up. I want people to, do more research and think for themselves and listen to any politician with a grain of salt and then look at what they're doing and look at the actual bills that are being brought forward and what it actually means. People don't feel like they want to do the work.
Have
to
they
make.
ever done the work though? That's the interesting thing to me. If we take a look at America back in hundreds of years ago, and pretty much any country throughout history, a
Mhm.
lot of the work has mostly been done by people who have had that much more of, let's say, a will to power to change things, be they the intellectuals who brought upon something like communism back in Russia, if we're talking about not just Marx, but Lenin and Trotsky and those people. In
Yeah.
a way, they were able to utilize the masses for their own particular ends. Obviously, it was very horrible what that resulted in. But
Right.
how much do you think it's worth? Kind of like what Mencius Moldbug, who I also want to talk about a little bit later, but
Oh God.
how he says that he would rather have like a small amount of people who go to Burning Man as opposed to having all these red state people. Because the red state people are still going to be there, they're not going to go anywhere. But as far as people who actually have a certain modicum of influence to change things, it would be people who are within the aristocracy, so to speak. Are those people either asleep, or do you think that, let's say, the institutions like the colleges that they go to right now have brainwashed them to such an extent that any would-be future George Washington never even gets a chance to take that responsibility on because they're just stuck in the self-referential system?
George Washington wanted to make whiskey, and he did actually. He started a whiskey company after he quit being president, or not quit, but after his presidency. He wanted to live in his and retire after the war, and they like, we need you, and that's the best leader, is the ones that don't want the power. And that's the problem with like Mao and these communist leaders. They want the power.
Do you see there being this trend of not like, let's say, a decentralized kind of decentralized, localized rule by some people who have influence, but this technocratic Xi Jinping like move in the
Yeah.
next years, either from the left or the right?
There's a few things I want to touch on. First is that feeling of these people saying we want that one person to come and save them or whatever. I'm kind of like paraphrasing, but it's like that's the problem. The founding fathers wanted the people to have the power, right? And it's like for that to happen, they have to participate in everything, and that's not just voting. It's these people. Just I was talking about entitlement earlier. They are so entitled that they're, instead of thinking I'm going to get into this to help make a difference, they're going, I want that one person to like come up and fix it for me, and like that attitude is why we're here now, right? It's now they're some authoritarian's going to come in and fix it. No, the people in power want the power, and they're going to have power over you if you don't participate in the society that we have been given by the giants that we're standing on, right? So here we are, where people would rather have someone else come and save them from the situation they're in instead of standing up and starting to participate in local government. And it starts at a local level. And we're kind of starting to see it because of the honestly, because of the pandemic. Because of the pandemic, right? Parents had time to see what their kids were learn about, the Zoom calls and well, like, what is this critical race theory? Like, there's all sorts of different things. Like the guy in Project Veritas just exposed for like turning their kids into revolutionaries, against the
Yeah.
US government to help bring them down. And it's like, this is the one thing that we've seen is people are waking up, and it's great because we need people getting in and taking over and being a part of society instead of just worrying about their own little personal bubbles.
Tim
Sure.
Dillon, who I'm a big admirer of, he was
Yeah.
talking about on his show how he thinks that content creators, YouTubers, whatever you want to call what we do here, we have about 5 years left. and he says, make your money in the next 5 years because
Hmm.
things are going to start closing up. They're going to start ramping up in the totalitarianism. To me, that's not exactly something that I would, number one, take to heart. And number two, it's not something that I would say that, okay, let's say, for example, that does happen. It's not books closed. In fact, to me, that's actually a sign that the more this ramps up, the more there would start to be an opposition to it, a state of normal people, people who are on the fence, being absolutely fed up, and
Yeah.
then we would start to see certain changes. So if I can, let's say, paint a clear picture of how I see the future and kind of get your thoughts on what strategies we can employ, then is that, let's say we do have this more of a creeping technocracy, it gets into the schools, it gets into, despite the fights against it, it gets into colleges, it gets into regular jobs that people have, to such an extent that anybody who is curious is going to start to be excluded. It's only going to be for the brainlets. It's only going to be for the people who are going to kowtow. And so I think that there must be something that's going to have to be done with all the people who can actually think. And that's where I would love to hear your thoughts on what is, in this potential scenario, going to happen to the people who can actually think.
I think there's a lot more of us than they they think. I think that there is a significant portion of the human population that wants to be free, that wants to have control over their own lives and wants to work for a living and have a true purpose that gives them meaning. And there is right now, it almost feels like the extreme sides, the two extreme sides are fighting. And the majority of people, in the bell curve of life, where most people reside in that middle area that want to be free, they want the best for others. And I truly believe that. And I think that if these authoritarians, whoever they are, whatever, if they really try to ramp up and take people's freedoms away, the optimistic person that I am wants to believe that they will rise up, that there's a lot more of us than there is of them. There is I mean, billions of humans on this planet, billions, right? How many of those billions of people are in control, right? How many? It's not billions, it's not millions. It's less than that, 1% of the 1%, right? What are they going to do against billions of people that stop them, right?
This may be where we disagree, and I respect your view. And again, I
Hmm.
really hope that you are right in that there are way more people than I may think. Personally, I'm more of a quality versus quantity type of
Okay.
person when it comes to, like I said in the very beginning of the show, that
Yeah.
I believe in a David versus Goliath scenario. I
Okay.
believe that there's going to be a minority of people out there who have what it takes to, like, regardless of whether there's like a million people or a billion people that are opposed to whatever they do, that they
Hmm.
would just be a lot more capable of. And it's not even so much that other people would not want freedom if given the chance. Like, if you say, like, would you rather I lock you up or I give you freedom? Obviously, people would say, yeah, don't lock me up. I want freedom. But then those people are going to find that they're going to have to work for a living. They're going to have to do certain things to get by. And my fear is that then when the prodigal son comes back and there's some kind of a Maduro type dictator who would say, like, I'm going to give you all of these free goodies, just vote for me, that they're going to say yes. Like, the thing that I think we're battling right now is idiocracy. It's there being too many people in the world who are stupid and too many people who will, not that they want to be ruled, but they're too lazy to resist being ruled, and they're just
Hmm.
going to go with the flow. And you're right that there is going to be a breaking point. I believe that there should be an elite. I believe that there should be a hierarchy. I don't believe in democracy. I believe that democracy is tyranny of the majority. But when it comes
It
to having,
is.
yeah,
And America isn't a democracy. It's a constitutional republic.
absolutely. Which is why I think that there's going to be few but very smart and very capable and most importantly very wise people that come out of the woodwork when things get really bad who would be able to put things together. At least that's my hopeful ray of sunshine after the storm, after the dark winter.
So what exactly did you disagree with me though? Because I agreed with what you were saying. You know, you're saying that you don't believe that there's a majority of people that will finally stand up against when authoritarians finally crack the whip.
I think that they would stand up only in the case that there would be a minority of people within that majority that would kind of start ringing the bells. Without those
Okay.
people ringing the bells, I don't really think much would happen. I think people will too easily start succumbing to creature comforts and to just going with the flow.
I
So
think both
without
of those things could happen. I think you are right. It is going to take people that are standing up. And I feel like your show, my show, other people's show. Savannah was on my show the other day. Like people like us that are bringing together like minds to have civil conversations about what is going on and making more and more people aware of what is actually happening. That our freedoms are slowly being milked away, slowly but surely, so that these authoritarians can take over. You know, we're sowing the seeds for those people that you're referring to, the Davids of the future that will rise up and help, you know, lead the idiots, right? I mean,
no, I'm not saying they're idiots. That's the
no,
other thing.
I know, that was the wrong
Yeah.
word. Not the idiots, more just the masses that, you know, go with the flow instead of, you know, that are just kind of like, whoa, all right, whatever. I don't know.